According to rumors that have been going around for a while now, Sony's apparently trying to buy the rights to make games using the Metal Gear Solid, Silent Hill, and Castlevania IPs from Konami, which would have been unthinkable 5 to 10 years ago. However, without Hideo Big Whip Kojima, making a new Metal Gear Solid game is virtually impossible, meaning that the IP is pretty much useless to Konami these days. While Silent Hill was never really Kojima's baby or anything like that, any new game in the series that isn't the infamously canceled Silent Hills is doomed to be buried by the fans no matter what. And even though I'm sure there's tons of talented developers out there capable of making a good Castlevania game, I just don't think Konami's got it in them anymore at this point now that they're pretty much focused on making pachinko machines and mistreating their employees. So outside of compilations and things of that nature, these IPs are pretty much dead weight for Konami these days, so if Sony's willing to do all the heavy lifting so Kojima Productions can make new games for these franchises, then Konami'd be stupid to just leave money on the table by not selling or loaning these IPs to Sony, regardless of their beef with Kojima himself. However, as great as it'd be for Sony to make use of these unused popular Konami IPs, there is another video game company out there that could benefit just as much from securing these franchises, and possibly even more so. But seeing as how there's not a franchise on the planet that'd get Japanese gamers to buy an Xbox, then I guess Microsoft's never gonna get a hold of these IPs. But you know what, I'm sure Nintendo would also benefit greatly from having these franchises outside of just making it less awkward for Snake and Simon Belmont to be in Smash Bros. And look, I'm sure the idea of a family-friendly company like Nintendo getting the rights to these gritty IPs enrages a lot of people in the comments section, but if you think about it, I think there's actually just as much potential for Nintendo to secure these IPs as there is for Sony. So sit back in your favorite YouTube viewing chair, call the fire department because this one's about to get out of control, press the subscribe button if you haven't already, and allow me, the world's fastest two-armed man, Cameron all one word, to tell you the pros and cons of Nintendo buying or renting Konami's IPs instead of Sony, or maybe even along with Sony. Okay, so before you assume I'm just gonna blindly praise Nintendo and bury Sony just because most of my videos are Nintendo related, then think again, because I'm well aware that Sony's the more obvious choice here as far as these IPs are concerned, because like I said, Nintendo's known for being a family-friendly company, and even beyond that, they've never really been that heavy in the cinematic games department compared to Sony, which is absolutely crucial for something like Metal Gear Solid. But you know what, I think that's all the more reason why Nintendo ought to try to get their hands on these IPs, because as much as everybody loves their first-party games, the Switch is definitely lacking when it comes to providing modern third-party titles that appeal to everybody. I mean, the console's got assloads of variety when it comes to ports of older games from previous generations, and that's great and all, but when it comes to strong third-party support outside of older games, the Switch is pretty much a barren wasteland. Sure, it does offer some multiplats from the other modern consoles, but not only are games like Doom Eternal or Wolfenstein 2 considerably watered down compared to their PC, PlayStation, and Xbox counterparts, but they also come out way later as well, which isn't really that big of a deal if you're mainly wanting to play these games in handheld mode of your dad's Little League game or something like that, but for most Switch owners, this type of third-party support isn't really what they were hoping for.
What are you two dickheads doing here?
What are you doing here?
What do you mean? I'm here for the scraps.
Frank.
I mean, yeah, even though some of these multiplats are watered down, some of them are still impressive as hell for a portable console. And outside of not looking as pretty, these are still more or less the exact same games, even if they do hog a little bit of your Switch's internal storage up. But having third-party exclusives that offer unique experiences you can't just get better versions of on other consoles or from the Switch's other first-party exclusives could really go a long way in helping the Switch check all the boxes off. I mean, the way things stand right now, the Switch definitely has some notable holes in its library that make buying a Sony or Microsoft console essential if you want to be able to play a little bit of everything. I mean, sure, most people buy Nintendo platforms for the first-party IPs, and the third-party titles are usually just kind of considered a bonus. But believe it or not, there's actually a lot of people out there who don't give a monkey's nutsack about Mario, Zelda, Pokemon, or even Steel Diver. So by not having true third-party support, Nintendo's leaving a good bit of money on the table, even if the Switch still is selling out the ass. Obviously, it makes sense for third parties to not want their games to be exclusive for the Switch given the hardware limitations that they'd have to work with, not to mention the fact that it makes less and less sense these days for third parties to want their games to be exclusive to one platform at all. So with that in mind, if you ask me, the only way Nintendo could offer more variety on the Switch that you can't get better versions of on other consoles, then I think getting the rights to these Konami IPs would be the perfect opportunity. And look, I know damn well that N-Dog's not getting access to these games before Sony, so don't think I'm naive in thinking that it'll actually happen, but if I were the above-average-sized N, I'd definitely make an attempt at it. Like, yeah, I know Nintendo's known for being a family-friendly company and all that, but seeing as how Disney owns Die Hard these days, I think now's as good a time as any for N-Dog to broaden their horizons a little bit, given how many game studios they own. And if that means providing less manpower to the new Nintendo Labo kit, then so be it. However, like I said at the start of the video, nobody besides Hideo Kojima should ever make a Metal Gear Solid game, so whoever gets the rights to the IP should obviously just let Kojima Productions make it. And seeing as how the Codemaster probably developed a pretty good relationship with Sony over the years, it'd honestly be kinda weird for Metal Gear Solid 6 to be a Nintendo exclusive. But then again, with Sony censoring their games more than Nintendo these days, the creative freedom is something that Kojima should at least consider. Plus, the game would probably take a few years to make anyway, so if graphics are the issue, then you could theoretically put it on whatever the Switch's successor is gonna be. But if we're being real here, then it's probably still gonna be underpowered compared to the PS5. And I know graphics aren't everything and all that, but for games that are heavy in the cutscene department, it probably is better to just use the stronger hardware, and the same can be said for the Silent Hill series as well. So with Metal Gear and Silent Hill obviously being better suited for PlayStation, the main Konami IP we're going to be looking at here for Nintendo to potentially snatch from Sony's Castlevania, since it's more focused on gameplay than anything else. Most people consider the best game in the series to be Symphony of the Night for the PlayStation 1, but as we all know, Castlevania's had quite a bit of success on Nintendo platforms as well. So if Nintendo were to secure the IP and let the series creator Koji Igarashi make an exclusive game with his new studio, then the Switch could probably offer a game that's just as good as whatever Sony can make. But then again, the whole reason Igarashi left Konami in the first place, other than the fact that they were making him scrub doo-doo off the floors in the pachinko parlors, is so he can make his own spiritual successor to Castlevania called Bloodstained, which is pretty much the same thing as Castlevania but with blackjack and hookers. So with that in mind, I could see why you'd feel like going back to Castlevania would be burying Bloodstained. At any rate though, while Castlevania could probably be as good on the Switch as it would be the PS5, that's not to say that it would be better, and to me, the main appeal for Nintendo to get their hands on these Konami IPs should be to offer new kinds of games. So even though I'm pretty sure a Nintendo-published Castlevania would still be fun, it probably wouldn't do a whole lot in terms of offering the Switch more variety, and in the end, it probably wouldn't be worth trying to fight Sony over it. So yeah, even though Snake and Simon Belmont are already in Smash Bros, and that Nintendo can make use of these franchises as well, I still think Sony would do a better job with Konami's IPs if only one company can have them. However, if Sony does end up getting the rights to these IPs instead of just outright buying them all together, then it's always possible that Nintendo could also get the rights to make their own separate exclusives as well. And you know what, I think that'd be really interesting, and probably the best case scenario for the gaming world. Or, you know, at least fans of these Konami IPs anyway. I know Kojima Productions could probably only make so many great games at once, but I'm sure Nintendo's got plenty of people in their company who'd love to work on a new Metal Gear or Silent Hill game. I mean, Nintendo lending employees over to Kojima Productions for a little bit might mean delaying the next cardboard game, but if it leads to the Switch having more variety in its exclusives, then I think it'd be worth it, even if all they got out of it were spin-offs as opposed to Metal Gear Solid 6 or a new Silent Hill game. A lot of people think spin-offs are lame or whatever, but in my opinion, sometimes they're actually more fun than the core series, and since I already own a PS4 and plan on getting a PS5, I'd rather play a unique spin-off than a watered-down port if I don't plan on playing it on the go anyway. I mean, just look at the Metal Gear Solid games on the PSP. Sure, they weren't as good as the core series, but they were still great in their own right, and to be honest, I'm sure there's actually people out there who prefer them, so if the Switch is too weak to support an epic new Metal Gear game, then these kinds of spin-offs would be the next best thing, and certainly nothing for the console to be ashamed of either. But I can't stress enough that the only way for this to work is if there were completely different games altogether as opposed to the Wii version of Ghostbusters or the 3DS version of Sonic Lost World. Again, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for third parties to want their games to be exclusive to consoles anymore, but if Nintendo were to fund the project and provide manpower under the supervision of Kojima, then I think a new Metal Gear Silent Hill spin-off could easily be worth it for everybody involved. Whether it be Konami's unused IPs, or even IPs from other developers, I just don't see any other way for Nintendo to be able to provide more variety in their Switch exclusives, because while it's great to see third parties make games with Nintendo IPs, it's really just providing more of what the Switch already has plenty of to begin with. So if I were Nintendo, I'd try my best to get more third-party exclusives onto the Switch, even if it meant lending a hand in the development process. Because after all, Nintendo might even learn a thing or two from other companies like how the internet works. Or, you know, they could just let Sony have all the fun with Konami IPs and use all the manpower to make a new F-Zero game or something. I'd be fine with that. But anyway, what do you think? Should Nintendo try to get a piece of the Konami pie for themselves? Should they try to take the whole thing? Or are these unused IPs best suited for PlayStation? Either way, vote in the poll, let me know what you think in the comments below, and as always, I'll try my goddamnedest to respond to everybody. But let me tell you, if there's two people who can make the best games out of Konami IPs, then it would definitely be today's patrons of the day, Jason and the Beholder. If you want to be badasses like these two, then consider supporting FU Game Crew on Patreon for loot boxes and all kinds of wacky rewards in the mail. And if you want to make cameos, then send pictures or videos of you rocking any FU Game Crew merch doing whatever you want as long as YouTube allows it, like these badasses you see before you. And as always, like and share this video if you want to help this channel grow, and if you want to prove that you're not down with registered sex offenders, then go right ahead and press that subscribe button if you haven't already. My name's Cameron, all one word, and I'll be back with more videos soon.
So I want to say thank you to your loyalty, thank you for your support.